true God needs to prove himself. Anyone who does is either mad or lying. So, which are you, dear Dreadwolf? Are you mad? Or are you lying to yourself about what you truly seek? I'm SJ the Raven, and this is Drawn to Understand, a series where I sketch characters from media and ask what they have to teach us. Today, we're sketching Solas. Wise Solas, compassionate Solas, deceitful Dreadwolf who has been breaking every Llewellyn's heart for over a decade, and has left the writers reading every little bit of emotional fallout ever since. What drives this elf who, in his own words, will lead the world to destruction? What drives a wolf who has been deprived of every pack he has ever known? Solas will tell you it's duty, or repentance, that he's simply following the path nature set before him, restoring what was lost. But I think this ancient elven god is far more human than he would ever care to admit. I think what he's really searching for is something much simpler. Home. Solas will do anything to restore what he lost, to go back to a time that, to him, made sense. To understand why that desire becomes so destructive, we have to begin at the true beginning. Not at the moment we meet him in Inquisition, long before that. Before he was Fen-Harel, before he was even Solas, when he was simply a spirit, existing alongside the one he loved. We learn in Veilguard that when Solas was a spirit, he was urged by Mythal to follow her into the mortal world, and follow he did. The wolf stayed with his pack, and thus started his downfall. Wars, rebellions, blocking away the only people he had left. Solas' life became one long lesson in loss. Every pack scattered, every home vanished, every attempt to preserve what he loved ended with him standing alone. But instead of searching for another, Solas becomes obsessed with rebuilding. This is the state we find him in Inquisition, a lone wolf desperate for his pack, so desperate that he would put an orb of power in a monster's hands. But let's pause for a second. Let's pull back the reins on this Dracolith and ask a simple question. Am I reading too far into this? Am I building a psychological profile on a few flashbacks and Solas' own refilled words? Well, to answer that, let's see whether the games themselves support the idea that Solas is driven by familiarity and order. Because once you begin to look for it, the pattern appears almost everywhere. So let's start with Solas' relationship with those who are like him, other spirits. Solas doesn't think spirits should change from how they are designed and becomes very distraught when they are. It doesn't matter whether it's a spirit of compassion becoming a boy or a spirit of wisdom becoming pride. To Solas, any change from nature's design is a tragedy. It's the ultimate corruption. This rigidity extends far beyond spirits. Throughout Inquisition, Solas approaches nearly everything with remarkably fixed ideals. He has little patience for perspectives that challenge the framework through which he understands the world. He revisits the past in Skyhold, revels in the familiar at Halam Sharal, and rejects modernity. His opinions of larger institutions follow the same logic too. He distrusts the Grey Wardens because they deliberately violate what he sees as the natural boundary between life and death. He rejects the title of Herald of Andraste because to him it is a comforting fiction that the world insists on treating as truth. And he speaks of modern Thedas with quiet disappointment, repeatedly comparing it to what came before. The wolf wants his pack, and he wants it to behave the way he remembers. Again and again, Solas gravitates towards what is ordered, familiar, and true to its original nature. Likewise, he recoils from transformation, adaptation, and identities that depart from what he believes they should be. So, his reasons for tearing down the veil become clearer. I don't think Solas is motivated primarily by atonement. I think atonement is the story he tells himself. What he's really doing is clinging to the belief that the world can still become the place he lost. That if he can restore the past, he won't have to grieve it. So, we've established a pattern. Solas consistently gravitates towards what is familiar, ordered, and true to its original nature. He rejects change, not because change is difficult, but because he believes it is wrong. But a pattern is only useful if it predicts behavior. So, let's put this theory to the test. Let's follow Solas through the rest of the series and ask one simple question. Does he actually act like someone searching for home? By the time we reach Veilguard, Solas has left yet another pack behind and returned to what is most familiar to Fen'Harel: freeing slaves, gathering allies, fighting for a cause he believes is just. Then he meets Rook. Rook is the break in Solas' certainty. Wolves circle. They watch. They calculate. But, as Barrick points out, Rook thinks in straight lines. They don't move the way Solas expects. And so Solas finds himself in another game of chess. That same kind of battle of wits he once shared with the Iron Bull. And he uses the same tactics he always has. He corners his opponent. He distracts them with memories. He reaches for the familiar. And for a time, it works. Until it doesn't. Because Rook is not a chess piece. Rook is change. They are proof that something can become something new without being destroyed. And in a world that refuses to follow the rules Solas has spent centuries trying to enforce, Fen'Harel is finally the one caught off guard. In the end, Solas returns to where this story began. Back to the Fade. Back to the place where he was once simply a spirit. Back to the person who knew him before he became the Dreadwolf. With Mythal beside him, he finally faces the thing he spent thousands of years running from. The past cannot be restored. It can only be remembered. And yet, there is a strange irony in this ending. Because Solas was not entirely wrong. The blight is contained. The Titans begin to awaken. The Elves begin reconnecting with parts of themselves they had lost. The world changes. But perhaps not in the way Solas expected. So, was Solas' obsession with home what led to his downfall? Absolutely. His refusal to accept that the world had moved on blinded him to the possibilities of the world that existed in front of him. But was his desire to preserve what was lost completely fruitless? Perhaps not. And that is what makes his story so tragic. Solas spent centuries trying to return home, only to discover that home was never a place he could rebuild. It was something he had to grieve. The wolf finally finds himself with his beloved in the place where everything began, and yet he is still alone. Because the pack he spent all this time searching for is gone. So, what can we learn from Solas? Perhaps it is this. Sometimes the things we love the most are not things we are meant to restore. Sometimes love means accepting that something has changed, that the world has moved on, that we have moved on, and that letting go does not mean we have lost what mattered. Because Solas' greatest tragedy was never that he lost his home. It was that he spent so long trying to return to it that he failed to see all the new ones waiting for him along the way. So, on today's episode of Drawn to Understand, let's learn this from Solas. A wolf cannot spend forever chasing an old trail. Sometimes the path forward leads somewhere unfamiliar. Sometimes the pack we find is not the one we started with. And sometimes all we have to do is stop running long enough to recognize it. This has been Drawn to Understand, and I am SJ the Raven. Thanks for listening.